Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I spoke to filmmaker Jason Horton. Jason's got a massive IMDb credit list with tons of documentaries and feature films under his belt. Jason also has the tagline, I make movies that make money, which is actually quite a bold claim these days with micro and low budget filmmaking. So I wanted to dig into the methods Jason uses for distribution, his advice for filmmakers, and also some of the things you should avoid. Enjoy. So my first question is going to be distribution. So you got a lot of films on your IMDb, a lot of films in a reasonably short space of time. What can you talk me through the different methods of distribution you've used yourself?
Sure. So I started making movies back in 2005, I think was when my first movie came out. And for probably the first 10 years of my career, it was all pretty traditional. Like that first movie, I was living in New Orleans, I finished it, and I just went online and started looking up like low budget distributors because it was a small movie. We made it for about 5 grand, and I didn't even know a market existed for 5 grand movies back then. But anyway, I just I looked it up. I found like maybe a dozen different distributors that dealt with very small movies. So I just started sending emails, and one of them picked it up, and that's pretty much how it went
Hmm.
for about 3 years. And then I started getting hired to direct low budget films, and those guys kind of had their own distribution already set up. So like they would come to me with a movie and be like, "Hey, we got this script." And they'll come to me in February and like, "Hey, we got this script. It's going to be on shelves in April." You know,
Nice.
so then make the movie. So we did that, and then I watched how they were doing distribution, and I was like, "Oh, I should be doing this for myself." So then I started, I would make movies for my on my own in between movies for them,
Hmm.
and then about 5 or I guess 6 years ago now, I had just made the decision that I wasn't going to work for other people anymore, and I'm going to make my own movies and do my own distribution or my own traditional distribution and go from there. And then the last 5 years, I have predominantly went with either Indie Rights, which is a traditional distributor for the most part, and then I do Film Hub, which when they started, they called themselves I forget what they were calling themselves, but they weren't quite an aggregator, weren't quite a distributor, but now they're saying they're a distributor.
Hmm.
So like that line between what distributors do and what aggregators do, or it's all blurry,
Yeah.
so but that's pretty much. And I haven't done a ton of straight up self distribution, like
Hmm.
selling off my website or something like that. I've done a
Hmm.
little bit, but predominantly it's either been with a distributor or a sales agent or a place like Film Hub.
Yeah. And so leading nicely into Film Hub, because if you Google the words Film Hub, I guarantee you your name comes up after it.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
because
it's funny.
you
Yeah,
seem like the guru on it.
yeah, I built, I mean, my face or my YouTube channel, which initially I was building it as helping filmmakers in the
Mm,
business of distribution and marketing. And I just started that pretty much at the same time that like Film Hub was kind of gaining popularity.
mm,
And I was personally just starting to see some real returns from Film Hub. So I was like this is fantastic. And even to this day, I mean, we can get into some of the problems with them later,
mm.
but I still, regardless of the problems, regardless of the things that have changed with them as far as their paid tiers or whatnot that a lot of
Yeah.
filmmakers absolutely hate, I still say with 100% certainty that Film Hub was a great thing for the independent film industry, for filmmakers like myself.
Mm,
Like I'm not, I'm not a famous director. I'm not a world class, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez director. I am just a guy, like working class dude, like from Indiana, from a trailer park, no money, no connections, and I can make movies for money that I can scrape together from, a minimum wage type job, go to a place like Film Hub, get him up on these platforms and actually make some money. I mean, I'm not rich. I'm not living in a giant mansion, anything like that, but I make my living and on making movies. And, places like Film Hub are what allows me to do that. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love them.
Yeah.
Like I understand people's problems, but I don't necessarily agree.
So for people who haven't used it before, can you
Mm.
explain what Film Hub is and how it
Y-
works?
Yeah. So before it used to be you had as a filmmaker you had to find a traditional distributor, and basically the distributor's number one job, regardless, people will say different things, but really a distributor's number one job is to get a movie into the marketplace. And as an individual, we can't, with very few exceptions, we can't go to the big platforms and just upload our movies. We can do YouTube, Amazon has a thing where you can do it, but for the most part, the platforms that are paying Tubi TV, or myriad of others, you can't get to them directly. So you need a middleman to get there. That's what a distributor was. And then a few years, after distributors were happening and streaming networks were springing up, aggregators started popping up, and these were people who were doing the basic job of a distributor and getting you placement, but that is all they would do. No marketing, no nothing like that. It's just pure placement. So Film Hub took this like kind of hybrid approach. They basically took the idea of an aggregator and made it like added a tech company component to it, created this algorithm, and created an online platform where filmmakers could upload their movies, and then all of these streamers, whether it be Tubi TV, Amazon, all of them, they sign up for it and they get a list of avails, of movies that are available to them, and they pick the movies that they want, taking away that. So now instead of having to go to an aggregator and pay upfront money, you can upload a movie for free to Film Hub and just have it available to all these people. Now, it doesn't guarantee you placement, but like 95% of the movies that are uploaded there, they get up on Amazon, they get up on Tubi, and then there's a bunch of others. But so it's basically that's what they are. It gives a way for pretty much any filmmaker anywhere at any budget level to get their movies out and available to the public on platforms that do pay if the movie takes off. Now it's not a guarantee. You can get a movie up on Amazon and you can make pennies. You can get a movie up on Tubi TV and make pennies. It's still up to the movie and your marketing and the poster and all that to move units. But Film Hub in a pretty cool way democratized distribution.
Yeah.
So, and some people will say, well, it also, maybe it's partially responsible for flooding the market with less than stellar content, and that's an argument for another day.
Yeah.
But I personally am a glass half full guy, so I look at it as like, when I started, like 20 years ago, I couldn't be making the living that I'm making now.
Mm.
you know
Mm.
I would, I mean, like there was nobody that would have took all those things.
Yeah.
There was, and the market's there for these low budget movies.
Do do you think, because you've got a lot of films, I notice you've got your sort of genre films, but you've also got a lot of documentaries.
Yes.
Do, is the reason you're able to make money because you've got a high quantity of stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so some people say it's a quantity over quality thing, but
Mm.
the thing that makes, because just having the quantity isn't necessarily going to do it for you.
Mm.
Somebody else could look at what I'm doing and say, "Oh shit, I can make 80 movies and I can make them, as good as this guy." And they go and do it, and then they don't make no money.
Mm.
The difference isn't necessarily like filmmakers get so caught up in objective quality, like it has to look this way or be shot on this camera, or whatever that be. Like audiences, if you know your audience, and like what makes my documentary things work is like I know those audiences, like I
Mm.
know them really well. And yeah, it was a little try and error to figure that stuff out, but now when I make a documentary, I know exactly what type to make. I know exactly what questions to ask the people. Like I know which ones like 60-70% of the time are going to be the ones that perform,
Mm.
and every now and then I'm surprised and I take chances and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, so it's not just, like a lot of filmmakers have this, if you build it, they will come
Mm.
mentality.
Yeah, they
So like
don't.
if they don't,
No.
like, and the only reason that they do to these is like I'll use the Bigfoot documentaries as an example. I've done a lot
Mm.
of Bigfoot documentaries, and I am making a very specific type of Bigfoot documentary. I usually make general subject stuff. It's not woo woo. I
Mm.
don't say, oh, look, here he is, you
Mm.
know, and there's a certain segment of that audience that really latches onto those.
Yeah.
So like I can pretty much, like if I'm having a bad quarter, I can pretty much say, all right, I'm going to do 2 Bigfoot docs this month, and I know those are going to make at least a certain amount of money. I mean, I
And
have, and it's not just, and some people would listen to that and say, oh, great, I'm going to go out and do Bigfoot docs. But again, it's because like you have to understand the audience.
Mm.
Like I'm not necessarily a Bigfoot aficionado myself. I don't believe in it, but I started, I did one of them with a friend of mine, and it did well. So I was like, oh, let's do another one. And then why is this doing well? And then I start watching the comments on these videos, whether it be on Amazon itself or on YouTube, and I started interacting with the people a little bit. And now, 4 years in, I've probably done, I don't know, 10 Bigfoot things. So like now I know that one pretty well, and
Mm.
and I know how to make that perform.
Yeah. And do you enjoy those films that you make, or are you like, I love all the genre stuff and I do the documentaries to pay the bills, or are you enjoying making all that stuff?
So it's kind of two things at once. So I've often said, and I've said on my own channel, that like the documentaries are kind of like my day job.
Mm.
Like it's like my floor now. Like I make, like 12 of them a year, and those are what I make my living on. And then like narrative features, I've slowed that down to like one every other year. And I do them for a little bit more money, $100,000 or plus. And if it fails or if it doesn't do so great, I got my
Mm.
my my day job. But the thing, so it sounds like I'd say, oh yeah, I just, I don't love them. But the thing about me and making movies is like, uh, I love making movies. I love the process of making movies, whether it's narrative or documentaries. Like I love putting things together, and like in documentaries, there's kind of a cool thing where you're putting together all of these elements that, really shouldn't or weren't made to tell a singular story, but then they do, or you make it do that. And like, so I like it. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And as far as the documentaries go, I really like I like learning about new things. So like for example, I mentioned the Bigfoot, and I don't, like I said, I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I am fascinated by the people that do and
Mm.
why they do.
Mm.
We did a couple of documentaries on fighters. We did one on, it was like a pro wrestler, a boxer, and an MMA fighter. And I don't watch boxing. I don't watch MMA. I don't watch wrestling. I'm not a fighter myself. I'm totally not into it.
Yeah.
But the passion that these people have for it, is one of my favorite things I've worked on. You know,
Yeah.
so that I really like that aspect of documentary filmmaking.
Mm.
But there's a creative thing that you get from putting pen to paper and writing a script and then creating that script with actors. So I don't think I'll ever completely give that up.
Mm.
But as far as making a pragmatic living from movies these days, it's like the marketplace is getting tough. I wouldn't say it's necessarily harder to make money with a narrative film, but it's harder to make narrative films,
Yeah.
especially at a lower budget price.
Mm.
Like for $10,000, I could make a documentary that looks high end, you
Yeah.
know. Now with a narrative feature for $10,000, maybe not so much. Some
Mm.
people say they can make, $1 million movie for 10,000, but they can't.
Mm.
It just, you know what I mean? There's just more moving pieces. And also as I get older, not that I don't like collaboration, I do, but I don't like the problems that come with it sometimes. And,
Yeah.
like the documentary thing, even when I'm working with another director, usually they just give me the material and then, I produce and I edit it. And,
Yeah.
and that's that. We don't really go back and forth on the edits. It's me. So I don't have that. I don't have anyone to answer to, which I
Yeah.
really like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just going back to the way that Film Hub works.
Mm,
So um, the different platforms have got different charging mechanisms. So advertising, subscription, all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do you see that when you've uploaded your movie? Do you get to see all the platforms? Do you get to see if people are buying it, streaming it? What do you actually get to see?
So FilmHub has a dashboard which does give you some general like reporting like for the month, but it's not like, like if you have YouTube, you can look at your analytics and you can
Mm,
tell exactly how many people watched and for how long. You don't get that there. You basically get this is how much money you made this month. And
yeah.
that's that. And some people, like there's been a lot of fervor in the independent film community, people saying, well, we need more information, we should. And look, I would love to have more information too, but especially some of us older dudes have been doing it longer. I mean, back in 2005, we would get one report from a distributor, like 6 months after the movie was out, and that report would have just like a number at the top. This is how
Mm,
much money you made, and that's it.
if you were
You
lucky.
would, if you're lucky, if
Yeah.
you even get that,
Mm,
like I mean, so with Film Hub, I can pretty much on a weekly basis, you usually get some kind of update. Like, Amazon and Tubi are the two biggest platforms.
mm,
And usually 2, 3 times a month, those numbers for the month that you're in will update.
yeah.
Like Amazon TVOD or Tubi AVOD. So like this month we're like 7 days in, and my reports are starting to come in, so I
Mm,
can tell like generally how much I'm making on Amazon and Tubi. Those are the ones.
yeah.
Every now and then there'll be others, but those are the ones that report the most steady. But yeah, that's pretty much, and for me that's good enough.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I would love real-time analytics to be able to, tell how my marketing's doing this and that. But guys, we've been making movies independently for, 50 years, and we never had that before. We did okay.
Yeah.
We can do okay
We
without
live
it.
without
Yeah.
it. Live without it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so another thing I see often pop up is people put their movies up, and then it takes a while for any money to come through. So is that a common
Yeah.
thing that people have to just get used to?
Yes. You just have to get used to. And the thing is again, in the old days, you would give it to a distributor, it would be like they'd usually pay a quarter behind. So, your movie would be released in January, first month of Q1, so you would not see that January money till like September the
Mm,
following year. So like there would be the quarterback plus maybe there was a delay in release. Like it could be like it would typically be about a year before you start seeing money after something's released, unless were one of those lucky few that got money up front or a buyout or something like that. But that just doesn't happen as much as it used to. And really, if you're making a movie for 250,000 or under, you might as well just like write off the whole idea of getting an MG. I'm not saying it's not possible, it doesn't happen, but it just doesn't happen much. So
mm,
just like let that go. But yeah, so like with Film Hub now, basically, so you'll submit to them, it goes through their QC process, which for me has always not been that long, usually a couple weeks tops,
mm.
sometimes less than a couple of days. I've heard of people waiting, a month for it
Is
or
this a human
longer.
or is it an automated thing?
I believe it's a mixture. So
Right.
I do think somebody's watching it, but just like with everything else, it's
Mm,
becoming more and more automated. So and they don't really publicly share their QC process.
yeah.
They say that people are looking at it, but I mean they have over 15,000 filmmakers with multiple films. I cannot imagine they have enough manpower for everybody to
Yeah.
be. looking at all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I just don't, I don't see it. And
yeah,
I know places like Amazon, it's almost all third party at this point, and it's
yeah.
all algorithm, just like
How
or
does
you.
it compare deliverables wise to a standard distributor delivery?
It, I find it easier, although distribution delivery in the last 5 years has gotten pretty easy across the board,
Mm.
unless, like, again, once you get into like, $250,000 or up budgets, then you start opening up different distribution avenues, like, pay cable and stuff like that. And then deliverables become more complicated.
Mm.
But when you're dealing with a basic, like, streaming distribution, DVD, Blu-ray, the deliverables are pretty simple.
Yeah.
Like, you're basically looking at an uncompressed or a almost uncompressed, video file, trailer. The most complicated thing on Film Hub is the poster sizes. So they want, like, I think it's 6 different poster sizes, and dimensions are very specific, and
Mm.
you can't, distort or squeeze things to make it fit. So, like, I'm not a graphic designer by trade, but I had to learn some basic graphic design so that I could create the different poster sizes for them. But
Mm.
now it's something I do, and I mean, I can do the different poster sizes and deliverables in about like 12 to 15 minutes per
Yeah.
title myself. Where, like, the first time you do it, it might take you an hour, but like once you kind of get it down, it's very quick.
Yeah.
It's like doing anything online. It's
Yeah.
it's very kind of intuitive. They have an interface. Type in your title, upload your title, upload your art. I find it easy,
Yeah.
but I do understand how somebody could be overwhelmed right at first with it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not prepared with your artwork and all of your
Exactly. Like,
assets.
if you didn't know the artwork thing, I
Mm.
mean, that could take you, days to do if you
Mm.
didn't know it was coming and didn't have it prepared.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely.
And that's the only thing that I've ever had issues with, like in the early days, was the poster size. 'Cause it took
Mm.
me a few to understand what they meant by don't distort or don't squeeze, or, and now their big thing is fonts. Because, like, when you're delivering a movie to a streamer online, they're like, the platforms are getting to be like Nazis about it. Like,
Mm.
even if your poster is in like tiny thumbnail size, they still want that title completely like readable, and like, so they don't want like ornate fonts. They don't want anything that's even slightly hard to read. I mean, I had a really nice one just a couple weeks ago that I normally do my own art, but I paid for somebody to do this. They did a really nice job. It was a slightly ornate font, but I could read it fine in thumbnail.
Mm.
I was like, this is going to be great. And it didn't pass.
Didn't like it. Yeah.
They didn't like it, and they ended up using this really generic, almost like Comic Sans font, which, I found upsetting. But it's like, and people will blame Film Hub, but it's like Film Hub's dealing with 80 different platforms. They're
Yeah.
just a middleman. They're not the what do they say? Don't shoot the messenger. They're the messenger. They're
Yeah.
not they're
Yeah.
not
And
setting their.
you've got to realize some people are going to be looking at it on their phone. It's
Yeah,
all different shapes and sizes. So you can't,
totally.
unfortunately, it's got to be so clear and crisp. And I think maybe it was on one of your videos when you spoke to them about don't bother putting festival rosettes all over
Oh
it,
yeah,
all that sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
because it's just pointless.
Yeah, most streamers, like, it's a rule. You can't do it. And then,
Mm.
like, I have this dude that I work with, and he's like, "Well, I go to Amazon all the time and I see they have their laurels." Look, people slip through. But and guys, this kind of sucks, but for independent filmmakers, the rules are not the same for us as they are for studio stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, if a studio does something and they get away with it, great, good for them. But we can't necessarily get away with the same stuff.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I think Amazon's the ones that's really big about this.
Mm.
You can't have like a URL anywhere in your movie that's leading to somewhere else.
Mm.
So, like, sometimes in a documentary, you might have somebody to say, "I'm so and so, and I created the website, blah blah blah." And if you put that website in their lower third, they will fail that movie. You can't
Right.
put that up.
Yeah.
or you know, some people will do the, you know, like the Marvel thing that's gotten rid of the end credit stinger thing.
Mm,
And sometimes I'm not saying it happens every time, but sometimes they will reject films just for that.
really?
Because
Yeah.
what some filmmakers were doing was they would upload a 90-minute movie, and then they would like tack on like, you know, 10 or 15 minutes of just like bullshit at the
Yeah.
end, hoping to get, you know, somebody that just walks away or just leaves it streaming.
Ah, right.
So eventually they made a rule where like there can be nothing after the end credits.
Mm,
And you know, and sometimes when you're dealing with an algorithm, you know, they don't read that post credit stinger as what it actually is, so they
yeah.
might fail it.
Oh,
So
that's
anyway,
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And you spoke about previously anyone uploads, now you say they've got this sort of tiered payment system in. Do
Yeah,
you use that, or do you just carry on as usual?
I just carry on as usual. So this is my thing on the paid system. So basically, they and I understand why they installed it. Like I understand why people are mad about it. Cause like, you know, if you're somebody that signed up 2 or 3 years ago and you talk to your rep and they said, yeah, man, you use us, we're non-exclusive. If you decide to pull, you just pull, no problem. And now they're like, well, if you pull, you have to give us $99, you know? So, and I understand people being upset about that,
Mm,
but what I mean, basically, what happened though, you got to imagine these guys got popular, and a lot of filmmakers were putting up movies that, to be blunt, shouldn't be anywhere,
mm,
you know. But the Film Hub doesn't like discriminate, so they put all this stuff up, and you had all of these movies that were making nothing. I mean,
mm,
like literally nothing, like, you know, 5, 10 cents, you know, and they have hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And then what I have found, and you know, this will be not popular among some filmmakers, but I find the people that make the most noise about these changes are the people who are putting up the content that probably shouldn't have been up there in the first
yeah.
place, that really wasn't going to make any money anyway, and now they're upset,
Mm,
you know. But anyway, and people were contacting Film Hub like all the time, like, you know, because back in the day, you know, if they put you on a platform and you didn't want to be there, you'd be like, you know what, I don't want to be on that platform, and they'll take you down. But now imagine you have thousands of these like rinky-dink films that aren't making any money, and you know, once or twice a week you have the same individual filmmaker contacting you, hey, I don't want to be on Stash anymore, hey, I don't want to be on Hoopla anymore,
mm,
or hey, you know what, I know I told you to take me down from Hoopla, but now I want you to put me back up.
yeah. Yeah.
Filmmakers can be a pain in the butt. So and so I think it just got to a point that they're like, we have to do something to cull this. So
Mm,
okay, we're going to create a tiered system, because I don't really think it's about the money. I don't think they can be making that much money off of it. I
mm,
think it's a way to, you know, ease up on their manpower
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
from things that were problematic. So now there is a tiered system, and I don't personally use it, but I think it's $99 is the lowest tier.
Mm,
And with that, you can block channels. So you can say, hey, don't distribute here, don't distribute there. And I will say this about that too. There are filmmakers with legitimate reasons to not want to be on certain platforms.
yeah.
I'm not saying in general that that is a bad thing. You know, like there's a filmmaker in my group. He runs his own YouTube channel. He has like 150,000 followers. He makes some good revenue, and he wants to keep his YouTube content exclusive.
Mm,
So for him, you know, like Film Hub putting up on YouTube or Stash or YouTube movies or whatever, that could potentially hurt his channel.
mm,
So he doesn't want that. So he'll pay the $99 as long as he's making enough revenue from the other channels.
yeah.
Like I get it in his case, but basically he's a YouTuber. You
Mm,
know, like he's not a filmmaker in this. I don't mean that in an insulting way, but he's not a
yeah.
filmmaker in the same way that say I am.
Yeah.
He's, you know, you know, he's making his money primarily off YouTube, and it's material made for YouTube.
Have
You
you
know,
have you ever thought about or put a movie on YouTube and made
I
money off
do.
it?
Oh
You
yeah,
do?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
YouTube, YouTube is fantastic for independent film distribution right now for a lot of types of content. Now,
Mm,
if you have a movie that's about drugs, or you know, it's like, you know, hardcore sex, or you know, if the violence is very, very extreme, you might have trouble monetizing on YouTube. But for like the documentaries and even a lot of my horror stuff. Like it's
Mm.
done really well. I've had some of my biggest months on YouTube,
Mm.
either on my own channel or through Indie Rights channel. I think they have like 400,000 subscribers now. I
Mm.
had a movie this summer, made $5,000 the first month it was on their YouTube
Wowzers.
channel.
Yeah.
And it came out, so like that movie, it was called I Want to Believe 2. It was a UFO documentary, and it came out the same month on Amazon for rental,
Mm.
Tubi, AVOD, and YouTube. And it made, what I said, it did 5,000 on YouTube. It made another 2 grand in rentals on Amazon, and did like three, I think it was 2 or 3 thousand on AVOD on Tubi,
Mm.
just in a month. But the point being is, like, YouTube didn't kill those other platforms.
Yeah.
They're closed ecosystems. So like
Mm.
filmmakers, the common distribution track, 15 years ago was a movie would come out, maybe you would get a limited theatrical or something. Then you would hit the rental stuff, the dying days of DVD or Blu-ray, and then maybe you would get a paid cable deal. Then after the paid cable deal, you do like paid rentals or vice versa. And then after that window, then it would go onto the subscription-based channels, and then dead last, after the movie was dead, like 3 or 4 years later, it would go to like YouTube or the
Mm.
free stuff. And that is just not how regular distribution goes for smaller movies now.
Mm.
Like if your movie is under 250,000 and you don't have like a marquee name, and I don't just mean like a recognizable name, I mean like a marquee name, the distribution is all basically the same. It's
Yeah.
all it's predominantly streaming. It's predominantly Amazon, Tubi, and YouTube. There are others, but like those are the main three, and you're going to get to those with pretty much any distribution avenue you go to. You're going
Mm.
to be on the same platforms making the same money. That's which is another reason why I like Film Hub, because it's kind of no muss, no fuss. You
Yeah.
don't have anybody to deal with. There's no interpersonal politics. It's just
Well,
it's you in the upload.
yeah. And do
Yeah,
you think doing that, does that then put more onus on you to do promotion for your films?
it absolutely does. And here's another thing. So again, 15 years ago, there were plenty of mini major distributors that actually did do their fair share of marketing, some. But even back then, like for smaller movies, nobody markets them. They say they do this, and this. It's almost never worth the fees that they charge, and it almost never moves the needle. And today, I would say it's almost completely gone. Like, unless you get like a major deal with a major distributor or somebody that focuses, like there's a distributor called Terra Films that does just horror movies. And so they have this little marketing machine with them. And if you have a horror movie in with them, that marketing might be worth it. But generally speaking, as an independent filmmaker making a movie under 250,000, you are going to have to market it yourself.
Mm.
You're going to have to, or hire somebody to do it. Distributor's not going to do it. And
Mm.
like I said, the ones that say they do, they're mostly full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Horror director. Um, is it horror because you love horror, or is it horror because you know that's got an audience and it will sell?
Well, I wouldn't even call myself a horror director. I've done a lot of horror movies, but if you actually look at my CV, and not counting the documentaries, I've directed about 25 features, and I would say 6 or 7 are horror movies.
Mm.
So I like making horror movies a lot. Like I like the blood and I like the monsters. I think I like the heightened emotionality of it, the like life and death stakes of it. It's like I feel like you don't really meet a person until their life is really in jeopardy, kind of thing. So like I like that about it. But I like all kinds of stuff.
Mm.
But as far as self-producing, I'll probably stick in horror.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and what about the actual sellability of it? Do you think, because I hear it a lot, that it's a
Yeah,
genre
yeah.
that's the
I
best
don't,
one?
I don't think that's necessarily true anymore.
Okay.
I'm not. I think there will always be a market for good horror. you
Mm.
know, but I think that it's a misnomer that, you know, you're going to put out a horror movie cheap and be able to sell it well. Like actually right now I have a friend that's doing these. He's doing these beach comedies, like
Mm.
raunchy, like PG-13, you know, no major nudity, like sex comedies.
Hmm.
And you know, they make them for $4,000 or $5,000, super cheap. And he's cleaning up on them. Like he does horror and that, and like his beach comedies are like
No way.
astronomically higher than horror. I think with horror, there's just it could, because of that old adage and like, hey, we can just go do a horror movie. That's everybody's first stop. So
Mm.
there's so much of it, and
It's a lot.
there's so much, and it's so hard to do a good horror movie. You know, like
Mm.
people say, oh, like horror is easy, you just do, but like to actually craft a scene and make it suspenseful, that's tough. Like to actually just go out and shoot a, you know, a talking head drama, there's not a lot, you know, there's more mechanics to a horror movie, like
Yeah.
physical mechanics. And I think that makes it hard for, you know, newer inexperienced filmmakers to make money off of them.
So you talked about a lot about the positives. So what are the downsides of Film Hub? What are the reasons you would say it might not be right for people?
So, first one, I kind of talked about the art before, but you know, I talked about Film Hub democratizing everything and making it so anyone can upload. But the truth is if you don't have some base level like proficiency in film deliverables or editing, or like you don't understand what a bit rate is, or you don't understand what an overcompressed file is, or if you don't know how to fix, you know, closed captioning or how to pay to get those fixed, or if you don't know how to create this artwork that's going to pass their quality control without, you know, if you can't do those things, it's not for you.
Mm.
It's not YouTube, you know,
Mm.
where you can just, you know, upload any old thumbnail and it's fine. You know, like there actually is, you know, a slight barrier to entry there, you know.
Yeah.
Second is, people need to understand. I wouldn't even say so much this is a negative as it's just how it is. People need to understand that like we're not living in an instant society as far as you put something up and you get paid the next month.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you put something up there, you know, like on Amazon, for example, Amazon pays on a 90-day delay. Then they pay every month after that. But the first time you put a movie on Amazon, whether it's through Film Hub or yourself or any distributor, if your movies get released on January 1st, you're not going to see that January money till February, March, April, probably into May, you know, before that money will be released, you know.
Mm.
So there's that, you know. So if you put a movie up on Film Hub, like it might, like on average, you're probably going to wait somewhere between 4 and 7 to 9 months before you see your first money, depending on
Mm.
the channel that it's on and how long it takes to get there. That's the other thing too. Like I said, you upload to Film Hub, that goes through their QC process, which is supposed to only take a couple of weeks or less, but sometimes can be a little bit more. Then it's available on their platform, but then it could take months for platforms to pick it up because that's
Yeah.
all on their schedule. So there might be some months where Tubi's just like snapping stuff up right and left, and there might be a month where they're not. You know, like I've had titles get selected and get up on Tubi in like a matter of days or weeks, and I've had others that have taken months. You
Mm.
know, one of my first movies I put up on Film Hub, this was way back in the day, 2018 or 19, and called Monsters in the Woods. And I think it was on Film Hub probably for a year before it actually got
Oh,
onto Tubi
really?
TV. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
this was way back then. I haven't had anything take that long since, but that one did. You know.
Mm.
And then this year around the summer, things were slowed down for a little bit, and I had two or three titles I think that took almost 3 months from upload before they were up anywhere. So
Mm.
of course you're not going to get paid for that, and then you have the 90-day delay on pay plus that. So you're looking at, you know, 6 months before that money starts to roll in. So you need to understand that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and this is something that is a negative about them that I can't really defend. It's just what it is, and I've learned to live with it. Their communication has never been great.
Mm.
Like they will get on an initial like call with you to explain their thing, and they're pretty good about that. But then after start uploading and stuff, I mean, even before the tiered system, it would take sometimes 3, 4 days to hear back
Mm.
from them,
Mm.
email support or chat support. Sometimes it's less, but like I get pretty decent support because I'm a pretty regular uploader. I make pretty good money through there. And, I have the channel thing. I've interviewed the CEO on my channel. So like I get decent, customer service from them, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't. And even me, mine's not instant. I
Mm.
mean, if I have a problem there and I email them on Monday, I mean, chances are I'm not going to hear nothing before Thursday.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so there's all of that, and
Yeah.
and and I hear a lot of filmmakers keep referring to themselves as customers, and this
Mm.
isn't necessarily a customer service. This is a really particular like skilled service, but they're
Mm.
not like I don't know.
They don't work
People
for you.
they don't work.
You kind
Yes,
of, yeah, I
exactly.
know
They
what you
work
mean.
with. They don't work. Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
work for you. They work with you.
Yeah.
And like a lot of filmmakers, have this, they work, for me attitude, and that's
Mm.
just not. Well, they're not gonna get customers like that. They're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a far cry from the situation where the old model where you've gone to a distributor or a sales agent, and you kind of can feel like they work for you because you're paying all these marketing fees and sales
Right.
fees and stuff. So you're sort
Totally.
of get even more frustrated. Nothing's happening with
Totally.
that
Totally.
system. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
talked a lot about Film Hub. What about indie rights? Have you used them? What do you think
Mhm.
of them?
Yeah, I have 5 or 6 titles with indie rights. I like them quite a bit. They're like for me, and the reason I keep going back to them, they're super transparent and honest,
Mm.
and like I said a little bit earlier, like distribution these days, streaming distribution, it's pretty much the same wherever you go. You're
Mm.
going to be on the same 5, 6 channels. You're going to make the same money on those 5, 6 channels regardless of who gets you there. So at the end of the day, to me, the most important thing is like trustworthiness and reputation, and they have that on both ends. And
Mm.
the only people that I've ever heard say anything bad about them are people that just don't really understand how distribution works, or they like overinflated their idea of what their movie should have made, or didn't understand the market, and like, oh, they must be ripping me off. That's one attitude that really makes me mad at filmmakers in general, whether it be indie rights or film hub or any other distributor, that they jump right to, I'm getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Because like here's the hard truth is, like, movies in general, independent movies in general, are not making much money. They're not. What we hear about all these, the golden gooses that are,
Mm.
and so everybody thinks their movie's worth this, and they're not. There's so many people making movies, and the quality's getting better and better as equipment gets cheaper, and it's cheaper to make them, and you can do more stuff with technology. So the market is more and more saturated. The movies I'm making now, they're not worth the same money that they were 4 years ago. Like they're
Oh
not.
God, yeah. I mean, when I think back to what they were worth in the late 90s to what they're
Oh,
worth now,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
where it gets painful because it's the same
yeah,
amount of effort. Obviously, you're not, you'd be filming on film. Um,
yeah.
so something I did miss out actually, which we should talk about, and it'd be
Sure.
interesting to compare this with Indie Rights and Film Hub. What do Film Hub take? Where do they? How much money do they take out of your money that comes through?
Oh,
And
yeah,
what
yeah.
about Indie Rights? What's the sort of difference in those deals?
They're actually exactly the same. 20%.
Right. And that's off the
20%.
top.
That's off the top. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And
And no sales fees, no anything else.
yeah.
Now with Film Hub, they do have that tiered system where you pay
Mhm.
so much a month if you want, and you can get extra customer service, or you can block channels, or you get a dedicated project manager, or whatever it is. But certain paid services.
Right. And
But
so I understand correctly with Indie Rights, do
mm,
they then go direct to distributors? They've not got a
yes.
platform, have they? They kind of act like a sort of sales agent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They have direct contacts, direct deals with like 95% of the platforms they put up with.
Yeah.
Now there are real distributors will subcontract certain platforms. Like I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what indie rights subcontracts or what they don't. I know for a fact that they direct deal with Amazon and Tubi and probably most of their others. Like like YouTube, for example, they've built up their own YouTube channel over the past couple of years. Like I said, they have 400,000 subscribers. So I think they mostly put stuff there. But a couple of years ago, they were licensing titles to other multi-channel networks on YouTube. I had I want to believe one through an MCN through Indie Rights made a few grand on 1 month there. But yeah, for the most part, they'll have their direct deals. And like Film Hub, they're dealing direct. I don't think they're subcontracting stuff out.
Thanks for listening. If you want all the behind the scenes information that's going to help you with a career in a creative industry, then please do subscribe.